Hi, in this quick tutorial I hope to show you how you can use Mindomo, which is a tool offered through the ministry and through D2L to write your essay outlines. It's a really versatile tool. It's really powerful, and with a few clicks you can move from a generic mind map to actually an essay outline that's really easy to follow if you just follow the basic rules of using Mindomo. So I've started here, and you'll note that I've chosen a question here. Now, this question is something that might be well suited to to the CHW3M course. Um, I've decided to choose this one because I am familiar with it, so I think I can make this work. But I've also made sure to start with a question, and I think once you start with a basic question, an inquiry question, it's so much easier to structure your essay outline. The way I like to think about an inquiry question is when I'm writing an essay, is that if I choose the right inquiry question, or one that's really meaty and gives me something to prove, then my thesis is essentially my short answer to that question, and then my essay is the longer, more well-developed response to that question. I hope to show you how that works. So what we have here is a question: does Cyrus the Great deserve the title great? Cyrus was a leader the Persian Empire about 700 years BC or so. And I've already started working on this. I've got one subtopic here, is treatment of the conquered. And I've got a reference here to laws. And you'll see here that I've added an image, which I can do through Mindomo. Now, that image won't stick with us when we go to the outline feature. But if I do want to include an image or even a video for my own reference, I can do so. So if you actually embed the video in there, you can watch the video as it's playing, and then actually add notes along the side. So and you'll note too that there's lots of other sources you can pull in that way too, which is really, really helpful. In fact, you can actually use a sound recorder and record some ideas that you might have and kind of stick them there, and then develop those in the written form a little bit later. So that's really powerful. So we've got a few things here already, so let me just go through the process of adding a few more. So let's see, what can I add here? Well, I know from my research that Cyrus, when he conquered some cities actually opened their gates to him. So many cities opened their gates to Cyrus, favoring him over their own leaders. Okay. There are cases of cities seeing Cyrus's army at their gates, literally throwing their own leader out and opening the gates and welcoming Cyrus in with open arms because he was such a respected ruler. He also followed the legal and religious traditions. Actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to make that a little bit more accurate. He respected legal and religious traditions of those he conquered. And you can see here that in each case, when I'm adding a subtopic, all I'm doing is clicking on the box I want to add to and just clicking on this arrow here. So I want to insert another subtopic here. I'll think specifically in Babylon, he agreed to humiliate deal where a priest slapped him in public. So imagine this in tradition, recreation of a Babylonian myth. According to traditions, the king of Babylon was supposed to stand in front of a priest and let this priest slap him in public, and this priest was representing the Babylonian god Marduk. The Babylonian king actually refused to do that because he thought it belittled him. When Cyrus the Great, who's a foreigner, conquers Babylon, he actually, one of the first things he does is he walks up to the major temple and invites the priest out and asks the priest to subject him to this trial, right, to this practice. And that endeared him to the people of Babylon incredibly quickly. So, and that sets him apart from other rulers. Another interesting point about his treatment of the conquered, he freed the Israelites from Babylon, and He's actually in the Bible, and in the Bible, he is the only Gentile, meaning non-Jewish person of non-Jewish descent, who is called a Messiah. So in Hebrew, the term Messiah means anointed one. Cyrus the Great was the only figure in history to receive that title who wasn't of Jewish descent. So that separates him from almost all other rulers. So what else can I add here? Well, let me think. Okay, for laws, this codex, I'm going to build off this codex here. He actually, Cyrus formulated a legal document that outlined basic rights 2,000 years before the United Nations. So the United Nations issued a Declaration of Human Rights, I believe in the year was 1947, 48. Cyrus actually did essentially the same thing 2,000 years ago. That puts him in a very unique company. Now, you can see here we're starting to build some ideas. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So we can always zoom out and in too, right? So we can see how this is progressing, right? Now, I can also add, let's say if I wanted to add another subtopic, let's see, another major topic might be his military conquests. And I would start listing them off here. So I might add one about his conquest of Lydia, which is a kingdom between Persia and Greece. I'd probably, given that I'm dealing with the question of greatness, I would also probably have something about the great man theory. I'd probably use that in my introduction, but I would develop all my points this way, right? So, in fact, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this as a floating topic. And I'm going to, instead, great man theory out here. And I'll show you why in a sec, because if I get rid of this one, delete. Okay. So let me show you just what's happening here. So we've got this basic framework. We've seen we've got one response kind of more developed than the rest, and that's okay. I'd continue adding more points as I did my research. Remember, too, that if I found this at a specific source, I could certainly even include the source here, which I'd really, really recommend. That way, that source that I consulted for that is right next to that piece of information I used, right? So let's see what happens when I actually switch to my outline. So it'll take a second or two to generate. So you can see here that what Mindomo has done for me is it's taken my major subtopics right here, and then it's given me the bullets that I added as subtopics, and then it's setting off the subtopics within those, right? So clearly I have a lot more work to do in these two topics, but you can see here I'm well on my way to having what I need to write a paragraph or perhaps several paragraphs if I needed to about this subtopic, right? And so if I continue this process of filling in this really visual mind map with as many ideas as I can, then I am well on my way to creating that outline. So, for example, let's see if I try something else. Let's see if I try, let's say I decide at first I'm not so sure what to do with economics, right? So I know that he established a major trade route that lasted for centuries. Okay, so let's see, I've got this, but I don't really know what to do with it yet. Well, see how accidentally this actually just jumped over to this one? So what I can do is just by making that connection here, I should be able to add that connection here, and then it should show up in our outline. So what that allows me to do is add more subtopics as I go, right? And make those connections as I see fit. So it's a great way to generate those ideas, just keep those ideas flowing in this area, and then map them out later on. So Now, as much as we made some progress in terms of generating these ideas and these notes, you'll notice I still don't have a thesis. I've got my question here, which is great, but at this point, I don't actually have a thesis yet. Well, what I would suggest is once I've got all my information in this area, everything I want to use, all my sources, I've filled out all the categories, I've renamed things. For example, maybe instead of treatment of the conquered, maybe I want to change this to something else that includes the Israelites, because even though the Israelites were conquered, he's not the one who conquered them, right? So maybe I want to think of a different term, and I can make that change here. Once I've got all those changes done, I can go back to this question, and I could actually use my subtopics here to answer that question. So I might, if I were to do a first draft of the thesis, I might say something like, Cyrus the Great earned his title through his forward thinking laws, his treatment of the conquered, and his military conquests. Now, let me show you what happens when we go back to our outline. If I go back to my outline, now what I have is I have my thesis at the top. I have my my subtopics here with the evidence I would use. And you can see how close we are now to writing that essay. If I were to map this out completely, I think it would be very easy for me to go almost step by step to finish writing this. Now, a few things. You'll notice here that this approach I've used at this point is really well suited to a shorter essay, say a 5-6 paragraph essay, one where each paragraph might be a major subtopic. If this was a longer piece of writing, say something that 2,500 word length, I might have to think a little bit more carefully about my subtopics, and it might not be so easy to just list them off here. That being said, if I keep my subtopics for my longer essays a little bit broader, then I could reflect that broadness in the thesis statement itself. So I hope this tutorial helps you understand the basics of using Mindomo to write your own essay outlines.